You know what's crazy, man? Sometimes the fights that get you the most excited aren't the ones with the biggest names. It's the ones where you can feel the tension before the cage door even shuts. It's those matchups where you know styles are colliding, stories are colliding, and the outcome could swing on the smallest moment. And that's exactly what we've got here with UFC 320, Ankalaev versus Pereira Part 2, because this isn't just a fight, this is a sequel to a story that didn't feel finished the first time, a story that left fans debating for months about what would have happened if just one thing had gone differently, and now we're getting the chance to see it all play out again live, in real time, under the brightest lights in the sport. And that's why it's so damn fascinating, because you've got one guy who represents ice-cold discipline and control, and another who represents pure chaos and destruction, and when those worlds meet inside that octagon, you don't just get a fight. You get a test of who bends, who breaks, and who rises, and that's the kind of energy that keeps people glued to their screens from the very first second until the last, because deep down we all know anything can happen, and that's why we're here. All right, so the first fight between Ankalaev and Pereira, man, that was one of those matchups where you could literally see the clash of worlds happening in real time, because on one side you've got Pereira, this absolute freak of nature when it comes to striking. The guy's got a left hand that feels like it's forged in some mythical blacksmith's shop, and his kicks, they don't just sting, they rearrange the way people move for the rest of the fight. And then across from him is Ankalaev, who is the definition of patient, almost robotic in how he reads situations. He doesn't get caught in the hype. He doesn't get drawn into firefights. He just systematically shuts down what you bring, and in that first fight, that's exactly what happened, P.E. Pereira came out looking to establish his rhythm, throwing those heavy low kicks, stalking forward with that aura of intimidation he always carries. But Ankalaev didn't flinch. He circled, kept his composure, and the moment Pereira started loading up that left hand, Ankalaev changed levels, shot in, and suddenly Pereira was on his back, looking like a completely different fighter, because once you strip away his striking, you're forcing him into survival mode, and Ankalaev was relentless with that pressure. He wasn't smashing him with wild ground and pound, but he was controlling, making Pereira carry his weight, and every minute on the ground was like this silent message: I can do this whenever I want. And the crazy part is, Pereira still had flashes. He caught Ankalaev a couple of times, especially in those moments when the fight got back to the feet and the whole arena would hold its breath, because everyone knows all it takes is one mistake against Pereira and you're sleeping. But Ankalaev just stayed composed, didn't panic. And every time the danger crept up, he neutralized it with another takedown, another clinch, another grind against the cage. And by the later rounds, you could see the frustration in Pereira's face. The guy who's used to dictating the violence was forced into a defensive shell, and it left fans torn. Some people were like, that was brilliant. That was how you beat a monster. And others felt like they got robbed of seeing Pereira unload the way he usually does. So the narrative coming out of that fight wasn't just Ankalaev winning. It was this lingering sense of unfinished business. Like, yeah, Ankalaev proved the formula, but Pereira didn't really get the chance to beat Pereira. And that's why the rematch has this electricity around it, because now you're wondering what happens if Pereira makes those adjustments, if he comes in sharper with answers to the wrestling. Does the whole story flip on its head, or does Ankalaev just reinforce the fact that styles make fights, and he's got the kryptonite for that kind of power? What makes this fight so insane is the styles clash. Because you've got Ankalaev, this dude who fights like a chess player with 4-ounce gloves. Everything he does is calculated. He's got this calm, almost eerie patience where he'll wait for you to make the tiniest mistake, and then boom, he's either taking you down, tying you up against the fence, or clipping you with that sharp counter right. And it's not flashy. It's not the kind of style that gets people jumping out of their seats every second, but it's brutally effective. It's the kind of style that makes world-class strikers look ordinary. And then on the other side, you've got Pereira, who's like the embodiment of chaos in the cage. He's explosive. He's unpredictable. He doesn't need volume. He needs moments, because all it takes is one clean shot from him and the whole fight tilts. He's got that left hook that feels like a video game cheat code. He's GOT, those calf kicks that just suck the life out of your stance. And he carries this aura where even when he's backing up, you're still terrified of what's coming at you. So when those two collide, it's like watching a controlled demolition go up against a natural disaster. Ankalaev wants order, he wants to dictate pace, slow it down, grind it out, and Pereira is trying to rip that order apart with raw violence, and that's why it's so compelling, because both styles are designed to exploit the other. Ankalaev wants Pereira overextended so he can change levels and drag him into deep water, while Pereira wants Ankalaev just a half step slow so he can land that nuclear strike. And stylistically, it's one of those fights where you know the margin for error is microscopic, because if Ankalaev shoots lazy, his chin is right there for a hook that can end his night, and if Pereira overcommits to a flurry, he's flat on his back with Ankalaev smothering him. So it becomes this fascinating battle of patience versus aggression, of control versus chaos. And the longer it goes, the more you wonder, which one bends first? Does Pereira get frustrated and swing big? Or does Ankalaev's calm turn into hesitation that opens the door, and that tension, that razor-thin balance between two totally different philosophies of fighting, that's the exact kind of thing that makes fans lean forward in their seats, because you know at any second the clash of those styles could explode into a moment that defines the entire rivalry. That's where the whole conversation about adjustments for the rematch gets so interesting, because now both guys have a blueprint of what worked and what didn't. And you know they've gone back to their camps with that footage burned into their brains. Like Pereira, he knows exactly why he lost that first fight. It wasn't because he didn't have the power or the striking edge. It was because he let Ankalaev dictate where the fight happened. He let himself get taken down to EA. Sealy, he didn't create enough space. He didn't make Ankalaev pay for shooting, and that's where the adjustments come in. Because if Pereira can establish those calf kicks earlier, if he can Pereira honest, because if Ankalaev can keep Pereira second-guessing every move, he controls the fight before it even really starts, and on top of that, Ankalaev's got to be aware of the danger of standing too long in that pocket, because all it takes is that one misstep, that one left hook, and the fight changes. So for him, the adjustment is about being disciplined without being predictable, about controlling the fight in layers, like striking just enough to set up the grappling just enough to open up the striking, constantly cycling through tools so Pereira never gets to settle into his rhythm. And that's why this rematch is so fascinating, because both men know the stakes, both men know exactly where the other one wants to go, and it comes down to who can apply those adjustments under fire, in the chaos, when the crowd is roaring and the adrenaline is spiking, because it's one thing to drill all this in camp, but it's another to pull the trigger when a guy like Pereira is trying to take your head off, or when a guy like Ankalaev is dragging you into his suffocating pace, and that unknown is what makes this second fight feel like a powder keg waiting to go off. And then you start talking about the stakes in this rematch, and that's where it gets heavy, because this isn't just another fight on the card. This is legacy stuff. This is career defining, because for Pereira, the guy's already carved out this reputation as a two-division champion, one of the scariest strikers the sport has ever seen, a dude who walked into MMA from kickboxing and just started wrecking world-class fighters, but that first Ankalaev fight left a dent. It gave critics ammunition, like, yeah, he's got power, but he can be shut down, he can be wrestled, he can be neutralized. So for him, this rematch is about proving that he's not one-dimensional, that he can overcome the kryptonite, that he can adapt and beat the guy who already exposed his biggest weakness. And if he does that, if he takes out Ankalaev in the second fight, he erases that narrative and adds another chapter to this mythical run he's been on. But on the flip side, Ankalaev is sitting here knowing that this is his shot to silence every doubt that's ever been thrown his way, because people always talk about him like he's this grinder, this guy who plays it safe, who wins but doesn't thrill. And if he comes in and beats Pereira again, especially if he dominates him twice, he cements himself as the real deal, the guy who tamed the most dangerous striker in the division, not once, but twice. And that's the kind of victory that stamps your name into the division's history. And beyond just their personal narratives, the division itself is on the line here, because whoever comes out of this fight isn't just winning. They're shaping the future of the belt. They're setting the standard for what the top looks like. And that carries weight, man, because every other contender is watching. Every future star is me, assuring themselves against what happens here. And then you factor in the fans, the people who are emotionally invested, who want to see if Pereira's aura of destruction is still intact or if Ankalaev is the guy who ends it. And that emotional investment is fuel for both fighters because they know they're not just fighting for themselves, they're fighting for their legacies, their reputations, their place in history, and that's why the pressure is insane, because you're not just trying to win a fight, you're trying to win a story that people are going to talk about for years, and that kind of weight changes everything when that cage door closes. So when you get down to the prediction angle of this rematch, that's where it really gets crazy, because on paper, you can make arguments for both guys that sound airtight. Like if you're looking at Ankalaev, you say, all right, the guy already showed us the formula. He's got the grappling edge. He's got the composure. He's got the ability to take Pereira out of his comfort zone. And if he sticks to that disciplined, methodical game plan, why wouldn't he just rinse and repeat? But then you flip it and you think about Pereira and you realize this dude is unlike anyone Ankalaev has ever fought, because Pereira doesn't need a perfect fight to win. He needs one perfect moment, and you can't train for that kind of danger. It's always there lurking. It's always in the back of your head. So every second Ankalaev is shooting, clinching, grinding. He's also living with the knowledge that one slip, one wrong angle, and Pereira detonates that left hook, and the entire fight is flipped upside down. And that's what makes the prediction so difficult, because you're not just weighing skill sets, you were weighing psychology. Can Ankalaev stay that disciplined for 5 straight rounds without getting touched clean? Can he drown Pereira again before Pereira finds his shot? Or does Pereira come in sharper, more prepared with the adjustments to St. Buff the wrestling and keep it standing long enough to land that one fight-ending bomb? And that's why fans are split, because it's literally control versus chaos. It's consistency versus volatility. Ankalaev represents that slow, steady grind where you know what you're going to get. And Pereira represents that explosive unpredictability where you don't know when the hammer is dropping, but you know it's coming. And if you had to bet, the safe money is Ankalaev. He's got the tools. He's already proven it. But if you've watched Pereira's career, if you've seen what he does to world-class fighters, you know better than to count him out, because he's made a career off flipping scripts and shocking people. So predicting this fight feels less like analysis and more like a gamble. Like, do you trust the guy who controls the fight or the guy who can end it in one strike? And that's why this matchup is so intoxicating, because no matter what logic says, your gut keeps whispering that with a guy like Pereira. All logic can go out the window in a split second. At the end of the day, man, when you look at everything we've broken down, the history, the styles, the adjustments, the stakes, the wild unpredictability of how this thing could play out, you realize this fight isn't just about who wins or loses. It's about what it means for the sport. Because fights like Ankalaev versus Pereira remind you why we watch in the first place. They remind you that in this cage, under those lights, all the talking, all the narratives, all the speculation melts away, and it just comes down to two human beings trying to impose their will on each other. And that's the purest, most primal form of competition you'll ever see. And whether Ankalaev shuts down the chaos again or Pereira finally detonates that shot that flips the script, either way, it's going to be one of those nights people look back on and say, yeah, I remember where I was when that went down. Because this rematch carries that kind of F-weight, that kind of energy, and that's why I'm so damn pumped to see it happen. So good luck to both of these warriors. Good luck to everyone who's been grinding in those gyms to get ready for a night like this. Because no matter what happens, the fans are the real winners when we get a matchup at this level. Thank you guys for sticking with me. Thank you for listening. And I hope you enjoy the hell out of this fight just as much as I will, because this is one of those moments where you just sit back, crack a smile, and think, God damn, this is why we love MMA.